Yes, hello everybody and welcome to this episode, episode 9, I think. I don't think we're in the double digits yet, but we are getting closer to the double digits, of the Omnus Chronicles. We had to do a like switcheroonie with our episodes because we were gonna do something else, but we're now doing something different. And luckily, I have wonderful people on today that deal with my crazy and the sudden changes. Um, so today we are going to do part 2 of the captains. As far as I know, that's what we were doing last time, and we didn't get to finish it. So we said we'd have a part 2, and we have a part 2, and we have a special guest. We have someone who's never been on the podcast before. So I will let them introduce themselves, because it's a first time being on here. So Commander Jess, I'm gonna give it away to you.
Turn on my microphone. Hi. I think this is the first Sunday I've had some time at 6 o'clock. My time to come in and join the chaos and the insanity, and I bring chaos and insanity and all
Sure.
things Star Trek to the group.
It is good to have you. Our lieutenant is still going to run it because he remembers where we left off, I'm hoping. And if not, the other lieutenant can put us on the right track, Lieutenant Kieran. Hugh is feeling a bit under the weather though, so when he slacks off due to being sick, we will pick up the rest and carry the conversation for you. But now I'm gonna hand it to you and put you in as a deer in the headlights again.
Thank you very much. I'll try my best not to vomit on camera or anything. Yes, no worries. Yeah, I think last time we got as far. We went through Kirk. We went Picard, Cisco, and Janeway. Yeah. In the 2 weeks since we've done this, I was trying to come up with a good segue. Like we were doing in the last episode, to Captain Archer. But so here we go. So Captain Archer. That's about as good as you're getting. Yeah, Captain Archer, a very different captain from everyone we've talked about so far, and in this part of Star Trek, when Enterprise came in, we see Earth trying to find its footing on this sort of galactic scale, or interplanetary scale, should I say? And although captains of freighters and cargo vessels and other such have been out there, this is the first sort of deep space vessel that the humans have managed to put out into the galaxy. And they choose Captain Archer, Jonathan Archer, played by Scott Bakula. Now, he's, for a captain, he's got his stuff together. You know what I mean? He knows what he's talking about. He knows how to command a starship, but he is quite rough and ready, and a bit rough around the edges when it comes to dealing with situations that are unknown to humans, especially when we see how he interacts in the very first episode with the Klingons and stuff like that. He actually endears himself to them for some strange reason. Not very many humans do that, but a captain who's has been very very cautious about what he's doing, but with a grit and determination that we don't really see in other captains, because although they have the curiosity to explore the sort of the whole wonder of the unknown is more prevalent, I think, in Archer than anybody else. I don't know what anybody else thinks about that.
I like Archer for the reasons that you've mentioned, but also it's kind of weird. One of the other reasons I like him, but I always thought that if my dad was a captain of a starship, he would be like Archer and act like him, and so that's the other reason why he's very special to me, is because sometimes I look at it and I go, my dad would do that. Yes, my dad would do something like that. And he just gives that off that kind of feeling, but everything else that you said I do agree with as well.
I like Archer because he doesn't have the kind of restrictions of what we learned about Starfleet with watching TNG and TOS and all the other ones. It was this new thing, and he didn't have as many rules to follow, and he was out there on his own trying to do what was best without Starfleet coming in and saying, no, this is this rule, this is that rule, you have to do it this way, you have to do it that way. And he was kind of stumbling around in the galaxy, in the universe, trying to do what he thought was right. Right or wrong, he was still trying to do what he thought was right. His ego got in the way so many times, and it was so fun to watch, where he was battling with all this, with dealing with kind of the Vulcan construct, with T'Pol always telling him, but we do it this way, and that kind of fight between what humans of Earth would do versus what the Vulcans had set up, and that conflict was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I think that's the first time that we've actually seen a proper divide between humans and Vulcans. They've always been best of friends and solid allies in every other iteration of Star Trek. Where at the beginning it obviously didn't start out that way, and yeah, that was a very interesting part of him playing the role, yeah, and really not liking him, especially with the way he was, his personal interest in the way his father was held back.
Yeah, I think we saw hints of that carry over into Bones. Though it had kind of mellowed by then. But you still had that kind of mild undertone of there being this issue with the Vulcans from TOS. And I think Enterprise really brought that to the forefront of why some humans would be somewhat resentful of the Vulcans just in general. And you just saw this kind of bickering about, the green-blooded alien with no construct. And that kind of filled in some of that history.
Yeah, most definitely.
I think Archer had a lot of pressure put on him from the human side and the Vulcan side.
Absolutely. I mean, everything was riding on him and what he could do.
Yeah, if he screwed it up, the Warp 5 program was done for another 50 years or so, maybe, before that.
How
before
many
the
times
start.
was it done?
Yeah, it was supposedly done quite a few times before he managed to save the day.
No, we're not canceling. We're canceling. No, we're not canceling.
Yeah, but I think he was the perfect guy to handle stuff like the incident with his Indy, which covered the whole of season 3, I think, of Enterprise.
Oh, the holes in yeah.
Yeah, he was. He had the sort of, I guess he had the sort of the ambassadorial type knowledge and stuff like that, and I've been able to communicate with alien races to get allies and stuff like that, and but also he was able to like kick some ass when it called for it, and it seemed to call for it more often than not when it came to that whole third season.
As unfortunately, that seemed to be, we're on the scientific peacekeeping mission, but we also have guns. Because I think that they really explained why kind of the new Starfleet had to get this self-defense system and these weapons on board, and the Makos weren't really fit for purpose. They didn't really do what was necessarily needed in those kind of conflicts, and it was an interesting kind of overlap from the old days of the Marines on the ships in the in the British Navy and all of that, and you had this installment of these fighters, and they kind of merged that into, well, no, these people have to look after themselves, and that whole conflict and the way Archer had to navigate kind of, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? I am bad with words. I teach science and math, not English. This sovereignty of his mission, his ship, he's going to do it his way, and he's going to be in charge. And the fights to get those defense systems on board kind of set up. Why did the Enterprise have all of these photon torpedoes when we're supposed to be on scientific missions? And it really filled in those holes. I thought that was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, he walked the line really well, and I guess it's you've seen other captains walk the line of what is and isn't right in terms of Federation rules, or in Archer's respect Earth rules, but human rules and regulations. But and we've seen a lot of captains blow the rules out the window for what they thought was right to do. But I think this was a lot more prevalent because humans had a lot less of an idea of what was actually out there and how to. I mean, like, for instance, I think it was the very first episode, Broken Bow or whatever it's called, where was it Trip, and it was on a planet with the T'Pol, and I seen this, what it looked like, this woman abusing her kid by taking the breathing apparatus away from him, but unbeknownst to them, it was they had the mother had to wean the kid off of into a sort of that sort of atmosphere, and off of the breathing apparatus, and that was all part and parcel of their way of life, and having to navigate all that. I mean, that showed up in the very first episode to show us that humans are pretty ignorant of everything that is going on in space, and they've got a hell of a lot to learn. And he took all that on board really well. I think a lot better than a lot of captains, because when you see all the other captains, they're from an age where spacefaring is a common thing, whereas going outside of our solar system and exploring unknown parts of our galaxy was a total unknown. Then it wasn't. They had some speculation, but didn't really know. The Vulcans weren't forthcoming to help out, and the way he had to manage it all, I think he did that really, really well, and his character came across very well.
Yeah, I think the Vulcans not being forthcoming is being very nice.
Yeah.
About that whole situation, but to find out that they'd been. When Archer kind of was realizing how much the Vulcans weren't telling Earth for myriad reasons, whatever it was, security and all of that, and that kind of anger that was building up of kind of being treated like a little kid as a culture, and you're not ready for it, you're not ready for it, you're not ready for it, and Archer was there out proving, no, yes, we are.
Exactly, yeah, and then it actually shone through as well how much Earth has affected Vulcan, because you always thought that Vulcan brought Earth into the wider space the galaxy and the spacefaring civilizations and stuff, and then taught them what they needed to know. But it really came round that no, with the episode at the temple where they found out that they were spying on the Andorians, and the episode where he was actually it was all about the mind melds and the different a sect that was the Vulcan government didn't wanted to get rid of, and although instilling sort of his human values of what are right and wrong, sort of almost forcibly onto them, and to make them realise what they're doing isn't right was really, really good and really well done.
And that was very interesting from the viewership point of view, because we knew mind melds were accepted. We knew that in the future that this was a thing that was not overtly rejected by Vulcan society, and that you get, it is Star Trek, you get these links with society, and it is a reflection of whatever is going on in the time that series was produced, and the social impacts and all of that. But I think they did a very good job of tying in their own known future to these kinds of things.
Yeah.
And letting us watch from the outside is because we knew that mind melds were okay. We're like, yeah, they used that. What was the deal? And to find that it was these kind of social outcasts, and I found a good and proper, appropriate, decent use for this, and have that kind of got brought back into mainstream society because of Archer.
Yeah, it almost sort of reflects, I guess, humans, society not adopting people of different sexualities, skin colors, and all that sort of stuff. It's still an advanced species who thought that somebody's practices were outcast. They were outcast for doing it. It was dangerous propaganda by the government to try and convince everybody this was the truth when it wasn't. And it was quite reflective that he managed to bring humans' experience to this. That what, we've been through all this. We've come to a united planet and now, and we've put all those differences aside, and you should be doing the same.
Absolutely. What I take from that is the ongoing struggle in society. We are still fighting those battles.
Yes, unfortunately.
And that, it kind of presents that we fight them, we win, but there's always some kind of next step. Do we help another culture and society fight the same battles? Do we fight them again? And we see that through Star Trek from the very beginning, of pushing forward this kind of social acceptance of the differences.
Yeah, the captains have always been really... the captains have always been really well-rounded in terms of being open to other things in other societies and other races, and their beliefs and their religions and their sexualities and all sorts of different things. But also put a spin on it that that was human. A bit of, do you know what? I mean, we've done all this crap. Do you want to just listen to us and, take a bit of advice of learned experience? And
the Archer finally gets to tell the Vulcans what to do, as it were.
Yeah.
And takes that step and saying, hey, look, you've been kind of telling us what we had to do this entire time, but a little bit of self-reflection. Look at what you're doing to these people.
Yeah, and I think that was really good about Archer as a captain. He was not afraid to confront all these things with people. He wasn't afraid. He was quite stoic, and he's, well, do you know what? This is right. I believe that this is the right thing to do. And although the Vulcans have been saying you shouldn't push your human ideals on other people, we know that they had an agenda behind that. And he was a bit like, well, fuck you anyway, because I'm going to do it because I think it's the right thing to do. And yeah, it was really cool to see.
it's not necessarily a human agenda as much as here is this different point of view, and you need to open up.
Yeah, exactly.
And take this kind of concept, which is really funny considering what we consider Vulcans to have, the the infinite diversity and infinite combinations, and you go back in history and they had those same problems of outcasts and some level of bigotry against some other group. Even the humans themselves, you knew that they had problems, aside from the fact that humans smell terrible. That was a hilarious addition. I love that addition to Enterprise. That humans just stink according to Vulcans, and that was just this fun little thing.
Yeah, well, just as well there's not smell-o-vision here, or otherwise people would be totally agreeing with that.
I was just like, yeah.
I am gonna have to. It is very interesting, but we are gonna have to go through the rest of them because otherwise we can carry on forever and ever and ever.
Okay, then next captain. So we've went through all the sort of major series.
I think it's Pike.
We went through all the major series of captains before it was Star Trek took a hiatus, so to speak, and so we'll jump into next to Discovery, which was the sort of brought Star Trek back onto.
It's a very good thing he's not here.
Yeah, no. And we have multiple captains to talk about here, so we'll be we won't go on for too long since we've spent a long time talking about Archer. So we've got Philippa Georgiou to start with. We have Gabriel Lorca. We have Saru. We have Michael Burnham. Instead of going through one at a time, what are people's thoughts on how these captains fit into the Star Trek universe as a whole, and which ones were actually any good, if any, or they were all crap, or they were all brilliant? What are people's thoughts?
I haven't watched Discovery for reasons very clearly discussed in previous episodes, but I will just say that despite Ross not liking them, I do think that they did try and pull off roles. Honestly, I really didn't see any of the I think I watched the first episode, so I can't really judge too much, but from what other people have said, they're not the greatest captains, but they're not horrifically bad. But then again, I could be wrong, so I'll just sit here and pretend to eat popcorn while everyone else discusses these ones.
Anyone else's opinions?
I chaos and insanity to the podcast. I don't think we saw enough of the actual proper Georgiou to really, we have the Empress, and she is a completely different character, so I kind of don't put her in the proper job of captain. I think, the snippet we saw that she was very encouraging to Michael, and followed some rules, and that was about it. I think the rest of them, when you look at it within the context of the plot lines, Lorca was out for himself. Lorca didn't care about Starfleet.
Yes.
Lorca was not a Starfleet captain, being Terran, and he was kind of the antithesis of what we think a Starfleet captain was, but he lured us in to this kind of belief that he was there and trying to do good and trying to be right, and then all of the pieces of the puzzle fit together, and you realized that darkness had snuck in and something wasn't right with what he was doing. Saru followed the rules.
Yes,
That's
pretty
what he
much.
did. Saru followed the rules, and tried to be a good person, Kelpian. Whereas Michael was fighting for something completely different. And her evolution through that first episode where she screwed the pooch, completely bungled that first interaction with the Klingons and started the war and had to fight back because she believed in Starfleet. And that was her thing. She believed in it. She had her own past, her own issues with Spock, but at the end of it all, she was Starfleet. And that's all she ever was, and that's all she ever wanted to be. And
Yeah, another captain with Vulcan issues.
yeah, well, there's a few of them running around.
Yeah.
But as much as people, with all of the talk in the fandom and all of that, in terms of Discovery, she is the captain. None of the other ones were actual captains of Discovery. She is the captain. She is the one that fought for everything to be put back right. Right or wrong, her methods, going off, that was her driving goal, was Starfleet. That was it.
Yeah.
And I think that was a brilliant way to put it for her. Is through all her flaws, through all her faults, that's what she held first and foremost. She would sacrifice everything. Her own personal relationships were sacrificed when that was the choice. It was Starfleet or her life, and she always chose Starfleet.
Yeah.
What did John and Kieran think?
I think the Discovery had a load of captains until we found the right one. But that was only found out in the future episode.
Was that the last episode?
I think so.
When they were older?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was so good.
It was. What about yourself, John?
I just said it's more of a crier, I think, than the captain.
That is absolutely not what I said, John.
But that's what you meant. That's what you meant.
Not what I said or not what I meant. I don't think she was a crier at all. I think she actually was afforded finally the human ability to express emotions.
Does not mean a crier.
No, that does not mean a crier, John.
I think I'm somewhere in the middle.
In light of all of that, when you look back, she really wasn't. She expressed serious emotions for the situation that I think no other captain was afforded that ability.
Yeah.
The captains weren't allowed to have some emotional vulnerability or emotions at all. They had to be stoic. And finally they wrote a character who was allowed to express the emotions that went with the seriousness of what was going on. And I think it was absolutely normal and nothing excessive whatsoever.
Yeah, I think I'm somewhere in the middle. The fact that I think they tried to write her, like you said, Jess, as someone who was able to be vulnerable and show emotions and stuff like that, and that's something that we don't see from many captains, because they do have that sort of militaristic thing of, no, I mean, you keep your emotions to yourself, you don't let your crew see you like that or anything, and you deal with it in some whatever unhealthy way it is. But at the same time, I think they overdone it slightly. I did feel that although things that she was showing emotions about and crying about were things that you would as a human, and it was right to show that. I think they just showed too much of it. It was like they were sort of overcompensating for the fact that they've never done that before.
To that, as much as I understand, is if we put it in a context of when she was young, she went to live with a Vulcan family and strived to be Vulcan for so long and was repressing all of that. And finally, at these points where she's allowed to be human, that maybe there is a little bit of extra emotion as she's processing the ability and the freedom to feel these things. You know, she lost her mother. Amanda could only do so much on Vulcan, and she had to fit in even more than Spock did because she was pure human.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if some of that was attempting to go through that recovery where, you know, there might have been some excess of emotion, but that was her process. Just as a counterpoint to saying, like, why was
no. Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Maybe that's why there was the extra stuff.
Yeah, to be fair, I'd never thought about that before, and now you saying it, that makes perfect sense. And if, when I go to rewatch Discovery, I guess I'll watch it in a new light with that perspective in mind. I never really thought about that before. She was someone who always put Starfleet first, like you said, against her own personal choices, whatever they may be. They were put aside for Starfleet. And you see a lot of captains do that. But yet again, they wouldn't really be a captain of in a show of Star Trek if they decided to just go, oh, do you know what? I'm just going to like quit being a captain and go and spend time with my family because that's what I think's more important. It'd make for a pretty crappy show, probably, even though it'd be a bit more realistic. As far as Saru's concerned, Saru only came into his own, I think, in the very last season of Discovery, where you see him against the Breen, and he's actually a bit devious. He's found out how to be devious in a tactical sense, and use what he's learned from multiple other captains that he's been under, and people that he's commanded. And I think his whole arc came quite far, which is really good. I thought Lorca's character would have been better if it was longer. I don't think he. I would like to see him in Discovery for a bit longer.
He didn't really mature.
Yeah, no, he didn't have the chance.
And then he was the bad guy.
Yeah.
And then we got control, and then it was just.
Yes, and then we got in season 2, which is a good segue into Strange New Worlds. We got Captain Pike.
I love Pike.
Yeah, I mean, there's been 2 iterations of Pike just now. The very first pilot episode, and then the Pike in the J.J. Abrams movies. But Anson Mount is just absolutely fantastic. Super impressed with how his version of a captain in Strange New Worlds it's like a combination of everybody else. He's got the strength and gung ho of Kirk. He's got the quiet thoughtfulness and contemplation of Picard, and his diplomatic skills and stuff like that. He's got the fight of Benjamin Sisko. He's he's really, really well rounded.
He makes you want to watch.
He does, yeah. He does, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I would, some of me wants to go, do you know what? I think he is the best captain. But then I'm like, oh, do you know what? There's Picard and Janeway. Can I really put best captain? But do you know what? He is really up there, and I think the more we see of him,
Brian, then say he he's the best captain of the new.
Oh, most definitely,
Oh,
without a shadow of a doubt, yes. Most
And for that
definitely.
era.
And of that era, yeah.
Well, there you go. There, he's the best captain of the era. There
Yeah,
you go.
I would take him over Kirk. Something that John might not agree with. Yeah, what do you think about that, John?
I mean, I mean,
Sorry, what was that? I can't really hear you.
I'm just eating Doritos.
Oh, right, I'm sorry.
You caught him with a mouthful of
John,
food.
John is having a snacko.
Nothing stops for Doritos. I quite agree with you there, John.
I think what we see I think it would be interesting to see what they would do in the Strange New Worlds construct with baby Kirk.
Yes.
Like, what would they kind of, not really retcon, but would they kind of tweak things to kind of paint him in a slightly different light if we just like redid that? Not that I want to redo TOS. I don't think we need to remotely.
No.
But
No.
it would be interesting to see, you know, if his characterization was a little bit different with this kind of new writing style and all of that. If Kirk might come out.
Yeah, I think so. I think they'll do it because I mean, obviously that they're heading towards the arc. Although they've not mentioned it in the last season. The first season was very much in the background was what's going to happen to Pike because you knew he's in the prime timeline. He gets disfigured. Something happens to him. He's in an accident, and he ends up disfigured and in a wheelchair. That's already canon. So how they go about either changing that in some fashion, or which will be difficult, or how he faces it, I think is going to be really interesting moving forward. And that I think is going to impact as well, seeing as how the relationship that's building up between him and Kirk. I think that's going to impact Kirk in some way and shape who he will be as captain.
It'd be nice to see kind of that little bit.
It would, yeah, be awesome.
Of background, just because, you know, all we know is that Pike handed over to Kirk, and that's there you go. It'd be interesting to see kind of what you could write into that, and give James Tiberius Kirk some direction. Even though it took him a while to get Tiberius as a middle name, that took a few seasons.
Yes. Second season.
A few times. But it'd be interesting to see how they bring that in, because I've seen so many complaints about what we've seen of James Kirk not being the Captain Kirk.
But then you need to look at it from an outside perspective, where this is it's a different time. He's a younger Kirk. He's not the Kirk that's already the captain. In TOS, he's the Kirk that's already the captain. This is like pre-Captain Kirk, essentially. And yes, people might be complaining about it, but you get to see a different side of him. You'll likely get to see him grow into that Kirk that everyone likes and
that's
no.
Yeah, that's what I want to see is will they kind of sneak in some of that progression and development of Kirk's character just at the very end, whenever I don't know if this is the last season, whenever they wrap up Strange New Worlds. That would be a nice little addition.
Yeah, I mean,
that some of those interactions that give Kirk the background that he needs to be who we know as Captain Kirk.
Yeah, I mean, we all know that everybody changes, everybody moves on, change is inevitable, especially when you're learning. I mean, there's in militaristic style organizations like Starfleet, there's a chain of command for a reason. And I mean, you move up the ranks when you get more experience, when you change as a person, when you become more rounded. And he's already moved up into command level, and what he's doing. He's not quite captain ready yet, and yeah, people need to be more aware of that, and when they look at it.
Absolutely, I don't agree with the people complaining.
No,
and
me
that's the point. I'm like, he is so young, and it'd be nice to see just, you know, something that takes him a little bit on that path. Maybe a personal interaction with Pike, or something. It would just be neat to see.
Yeah, it'd be good to see some sort of handover between Pike and him, because we know that's would it be Robert April was first Captain Enterprise, handed over to Pike, handed over to Kirk. So we know that's a progression of the command structure of the Enterprise. So yeah, it's just how they go about doing that and fitting Kirk in to be the man he was in the very first episode, well, the second pilot, should I say, of TOS.
No, that would be good. But I still love Pike. I think he's amazing. I love what they've done with this kind of fated character who you saw briefly in that first pilot, and then you knew his fate.
Yeah.
And they have managed to
Yeah,
rebuild,
except
And that he knows it, and he
knows
feels
it, and what they've been able to do, just with him being a captain, but then him dealing with all of that. As I've just started a rewatch, and kind of seeing that kind of trauma response and how he pulls through that is fantastic.
Yeah, because it's not only, it's not when he's going to die. Like some people have known when they're going to die, or have some advanced notice, or they knew just like a couple of minutes before it was going to happen that it was going to happen. Like when the moment in Wrath of Khan between Spock and Kirk was one of the most amazing parts of Star Trek ever. So I mean, he knew he was going to die. Kirk knew he was going to die. But this is something different. This is a change, a total change in who he is and his abilities to be who he is. As not only as a captain but as a human, and will restrict and change his life completely and entirely in a way that is, from an outside perspective as it is at the moment, not very pleasant.
Yeah, and just what he's able to do with that, I think, is just so well written. But the way it's played, but the way it's played, I mean, you can have a well-written character, but if the actor can't pull it off, I think Anson Mount just pulls that off entirely.
Oh yeah,
the little micro expressions, and you know that he's thought about it.
I guess he's like Picard in a way, or Patrick Stewart, should I say, in that he's not afraid to do the embarrassing parts of acting. He seems to like really get off on it. Whereas I think Patrick Stewart done that as well. There's plenty of embarrassing things that Picard had to do, and as an actor that would have been embarrassing to do, but he seemed to revel in it. And I think Anson Mount is the same.
Do some pretty embarrassing things.
Yeah, especially with if you've seen the trailer for the new season that's coming out beginning of next year, but he's turned into a Vulcan for a while, but yeah, that's season 3, and it's been renewed for season 4, which starts filming sometime next year as well. So, which is really good. So yeah, it's there's still a lot to be told. And
oh yes, I think I saw the little bit where they were all Vulcan.
Yeah, it looks really good.
That's funny, yeah.
Yeah.
I tend not to watch trailers, but I see a few bits and pieces.
I think it's going to be a comedic episode.
I love the comedic episodes, I can't lie.
No, me too. That's one thing that Star Trek does really, really well. I mean,
the musical just had me in stitches.
Oh, it did. That was hilarious, especially the Klingon bit. Yeah, I was wetting myself laughing. I thought it was absolutely hilarious.
That's why they don't talk about it.
Yeah. It's one of these episodes I was like, okay, I'll watch it to see, because it's Star Trek, I'll see what it's going to be like, because I really have my doubts about how good this is going to be. But no, they really pulled it off. It was really good. It was like the whole episode where they brought Boiler and thingy from Lower Decks in as well. How they combined it. That episode was really well
so
done.
well done.
Yeah, very much.
The Riker maneuver. I mean, the jokes about the beep beep chair. So well done.
Yeah, it was absolutely brilliant.
That was put in by himself, wasn't it? By himself. He decided to do it as a tribute to Riker.
Oh,
Yes.
cool.
It wasn't.
Yeah,
it
I
wasn't
think he just thought that it would be fun.
yeah, he just
Jack
done
Quaid
it.
was like, I wonder if I could do this.
And he did it.
That's fantastic.
Mm.
Right, well, we're pretty much caught up to date with all the captains now. So I'll go round I would say room, but we're all in different rooms. So I will go round the Discord and give everybody a chance now that we've done all the captains to just who's your favourite captain and why? Why don't we start off with our captain?
Mine is still has been, still always will be Janeway. She is the absolute, for me, the absolute 100% be all end all captain. Yeah, she's always my favorite. And if you want to know why, watch the previous episode and then come back and finish this one.
And Jess?
Janeway.
Janeway again?
Hands down, Janeway. I know I was not here for the previous one, but I was at, oh gosh, I think it was a Burns supper with the Alba a couple of years ago, and we were talking about what captain was the best, and I was absolutely able to convince a couple of people that Janeway was indeed the best captain, simply because of she had to deal with something that no one else had to deal with before, and rally the crew and keep that crew together beyond anything anyone had experienced. And she did it. And then Prodigy. She's just amazing.
Yeah. And John?
Tough one for me. Still Kirk first. Kirk and I think Cisco together.
Awesome. And Kieran?
Janeway.
I'm good one now.
Janeway as well. So I'm the only person that's going on here as a Picard man.
No, well, on this one, yes, but the person behind me is a Picard man.
I mean, although the first captain I seen was Kirk. I grew up mostly with Picard. Super impressed with Janeway. She'd be my second favourite. Although, like I say, I mean, eventually, Pike might actually outperform both of them. But yeah, I sort of Picard, who I grew up with, I have a soft spot for, I guess, Patrick Stewart as a whole, because he's played so many great characters and awesome shows and movies that I like. Sorry?
To Janus, Claudius.
Yeah, he's done so much. His one-man show of A Christmas Carol was absolutely amazing as well. He's done so much cool stuff, and I'm still a Picard man. I would need to say, and for the reasons, because he's the first.
He's my second favorite.
Yeah, he's the first captain who I could sort of believe was a captain, if you know what I mean. I don't know if I've put myself properly. Kirk was always a sort of, I guess he was a captain of his time, and in his bravado and brashness and womanizing, whereas Picard was a Starfleet captain through and through, and nothing would get in the way of that. But at the same time, he wasn't like Saru, blindly following the rules. I mean, if he on many occasions has ignored the Prime Directive to do what he thought was the right thing to do, and he stood up to admirals and everybody else like that, and yeah, that was awesome.
Did
I heard something, but I don't know who it was.
I was just
It was just, but it cut out.
thinking, if did anybody actually always follow the Prime Directive, or didn't everybody break it at some point?
Yes, yeah. I guess everybody has, yeah.
Yes.
Apart from, I think the only one not to is Archer, but that's because they didn't
It
have the
didn't
Prime
exist.
Directive.
I didn't front it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's why. Well, it wasn't. It's Pike why it is the Prime Directive.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
That's it.
technically, yeah,
Oh,
Pike is why.
Kind of counts then.
I just watched that episode yesterday. Pike is now the Prime Directive.
Awesome.
I guess Archer kind of counts then as not following.
Yeah, 'cause it
Technically,
wasn't
in
a
a
thing.
way,
Yeah,
sort of.
for him.
Yeah, I mean it didn't exist, but he definitely did not follow it.
Yeah, he didn't follow it, but he didn't break it either.
Yeah, because it didn't exist. So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, it's one of those things.
Yeah, but I think that's what makes a good captain in Star Trek. With Star Trek's beliefs of humanity coming together and building a paradise of a world to live in, and having no more wars or bigotry or hatred or anything like that. It's good to have a captain that will, although these rules have been put down, that will actually say, do you know what? I think, in my personal opinion, I know I have a good idea of what is right and wrong, and this is wrong, so I'm going to go against it to do what I think is right. And I think that
It's like
makes a
a
captain.
gut feeling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, that gut feeling that you know what's right and wrong. It's like everybody's had a sense of right and wrong instilled in them by their parents or guardians, whatever way they grew up, and then that is being fleshed out as they become an adult. Yeah, I think it is very human to break the rules to go on instinct to do the right thing.
So then even we've all broken the Prime Directive in some way.
Yes.
Oh, I have.
It's human nature.
But it is one of those things where these rules are set back on a planet, back, on space docks or wherever, and not out there in the field, as it
Yeah.
were.
And it does say a lot about Starfleet as an organisation, that the Prime Directive can be broken by captains, and as long as they've got an effing good reason for it, then they're pretty much okay with it.
I mean, it is a bit of a pain to go through the court-martial process, but yeah.
Yeah.
Good in breaking, he bent him.
Yes.
He didn't break him, he
Just
bent him. Yeah.
Not broken, they're just bent. Ever so
Yeah.
slightly.
Modified slightly.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yes, and that's all for the. I think we've been through all the captains. If anybody else has anything to say before we go, please do so. Otherwise, I shall hand it off to our captain to sign us off.
Okay, so I guess that's my cue then. Thank you very much to everyone for joining, firstly. I really do appreciate you taking the time out of your Sunday evening to sit and talk about the thing that brings us all together, the love of Star Trek, and just how much we enjoy it. And hearing everyone's different opinions is always quite interesting, because we all have different opinions, but similar ideas essentially with some of the things. So it's always quite interesting to hear. For those of you who are watching on the socials, obviously, hey look, and he's gone. Thank you so much for watching. For those of you listening on the audio platforms, thank you so much for listening. And until then, thank you so much for joining, and have a wonderful day. Bye.